Welcome, everybody. This is the last episode of our four-part series, Thrive RX, moving beyond burnout towards flourishing. I'm really happy to have the Thrive RX team here again with me. Just to recap, we've solicited questions from our physician colleagues, and we've tried to broken them up into themes. The first one was personal well-being. Second episode, if you want to go back, was how to reclaim joy in medicine. Last week, we had a lot of discussion around success in the workplace, how to get what you want. And this week is going to be a very special one where we talk about being able to work on your own terms and learn some financial principles that help us really move away from having to be tied to a negative work environment for a paycheck and really kind of get the ability to work the way we want to work. So I'm really, really excited for this week's discussion. We've got Jordan, Paul, and Keaton. If you guys wouldn't mind going around and just introducing yourselves. Once again, Jordan, we'll start with you.
Hey there, Jordan here. Delighted to be here for part 4 and to learn a lot from our colleagues. I am a fourth-year medical student and positive psychology practitioner and an emerging psychiatrist and one of our instructors of Thrive RX.
Great. Paul?
Hi there, Paul Frampus, practicing emergency physician and medical director of patient safety for a large academic medical healthcare system in Pennsylvania and a faculty member of Thrive RX, and I'm happy to be here and see everybody again.
Great. And Keaton?
Hi, everybody. I'm Keaton Kulkarni. I'm an oncologist, a clinician researcher, and an entrepreneur, and I'm a big advocate for financial literacy and independence.
Great. And I'm Sanj Katyal. I'm a practicing radiologist and part of the Thrive RX team as well. And with that, let's get on to this week's question. How can I be financially free so that I can work on my own terms? That's a great question. And I think the sooner we answer that question in our career, the better off we're going to be. Keaton, you want to start us off?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great question, and we could chew up hours and hours trying to answer the question. But just continuing with the theme that we have discussed, we can learn about positive psychology. We can really learn to master our work schedules. We can really learn to succeed in our lives and learn leadership principles. But the fourth pillar is equally important, and that's being aware of our finances and being really aware that we need to be financially independent. So, let's try to define what financially independent means. So financially independent would mean that you're able to generate passive income from different sources so that takes care of your expenses and you, if possible, have leftover cash. So that means that you can design your work schedule in the way you want instead of having to work for a certain paycheck. Now, certainly for most physicians, it's not going to happen like that. It's not going to happen in snap like we were talking last time. Most of us spend long years in training, often more than a decade, and accrue a lot of debt before we start making any money. So, the sooner we understand the importance of financial well-being, the sooner, we are going to master the financial game. And so, I think in our Thrive RX, we go deep and try to explore various principles of Finance 101, active and passive investments, real estate investing, different asset classes, how do you generate sources of income? And really, some people might say that, why can't we just hand over money to somebody and they can take care of it? I think that's probably stretching it too far. We are probably the most, important person in our financial game. Nobody can really take care of our finances much better than us. We really do need to understand where our money is going, what cash flow means, how do we invest, what do returns mean, what is compounding, what is compound interest, what is the risk. So all this really overwhelms physicians. It often seems that most physicians would rather not deal with the money. We shy away and we don't really want to talk about the money aspect, but that's not true. So often I've been helping a lot of fairly senior colleagues, to set up financial portfolios, and you are flabbergasted. They wouldn't even have any big nest eggs, let alone planning for retirement. they first need to start building sufficient momentum with their money before they can really think about, alternative asset classes. So, I think the solution really is to acknowledge that we need to master and learn about our finances. We need to start early. We need to live below our means, and we really need to understand how the financial game works. It's not complicated. I think we can break it down into simple blocks and really try and slowly master it. I don't know, how does that sound?
No, that's a great opening.
I think it's a great approach. I think it's a great approach. I like in the course the way you break it down, and you start with the basics, and then you lead people to understand the different classes, and and sort of. I also like how you're engaging people in a teaching kind of way, so they can do what's comfortable for them, because it's not a formula. If this then that, it's much more sort of enveloping of who you are. You mentioned the risk tolerance already. And then sometimes I think helping people find the expertise that they need, and recognizing, because I also find with some people in and around physicians, is we oftentimes think we know too much about something else, and not realize that the financial world has its own expertise. And I think your point is very, very good. It is sort of, we are the ones that are going to care most about our money. And part of that is engaging with the expertise that we need to maximize that. And I really like the way you lead people through that in the course.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I totally agree. I think it's really being engaged, being aware, and we cannot replace. So this is not to say that we can replace an expert, financial consultant or an expert finance advisor. But we really do need to understand what they are trying to tell us. We need to understand what a fiduciary advisor is and who is working in our best interest. Failing that, I think we are risking a lot. We are risking too much of our future. We can take simple steps to really sort of master the game and be aware. And I've seen a lot of people succeed. There's hundreds and thousands of examples of people who've done really well, among physicians anyways. So.
And don't you think?
So
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jordan.
Oh no, go ahead, Paul. I'll save my question.
Oh, my question was going to be, don't you think also, Ketan, that it's never too early to get started? I mean, even when you're in the student phase and you're still on the sort of the negative income and borrowing against the future, that transition from student to resident maybe isn't as big as from resident to attending. But I think that maybe some people come too late to the game and recognize, oh, wow, I'm behind. I'm 5 years into this, 10 years into this. And I think, it's kind of never too early to get started. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we can look at one of the greatest investors on the planet. And, anybody would tell you that Warren Buffett started, when he was like 10 years old, and he was serious about investing even before he was a teen. And, everybody knows that majority of his wealth was acquired after he was 66. So he has, like we were talking last week, about 80 years of, investment horizon, which is above and beyond what most people are going to achieve. So that's an extreme example. But, most of us can probably start getting pretty serious about this, as soon as they're in their early 20s, and start investing. It doesn't matter how much money you're making or how much you are in debt. Even if you started small, as little as $100 a month or something like that, it's going to slowly build up, right? Because that momentum is going to gain. Like, we discussed that graph, in one of our slides, in one of the talks, that, if you compare two people, one who started at 20 and say another one who started at 35, the difference 35 years down the line, even if they got the exact same amount of return, is exponential, right? It's many, many times. So that difference cannot be bridged. I mean, if you were a physician who was, say, 45 and you got serious, you're probably going to have to invest tens of thousands of dollars probably monthly to catch up with somebody who started when they were 25, because the momentum of their money is so much, And that's why I think it's so important to take an active interest and develop your own financial plan, like you said, Paul, it cannot be a cookie cutter approach, that's the easy way. We really have to figure out what is it that we want, and we were talking about this last week, that money is a means goal to achieve our end goal. So, somebody might want $50,000 a year to survive, and somebody else might want many times more. It really depends on what you want and how you need to get there. And that's what the financial plan is going to help with. That, we really need to individualize this, just like precision medicine. That's going to click with people. We need to individualize our medicine. So do we need to individualize our financial plans.
I'm just so grateful for this insight, because I'm like one of those people who, it comes to finances and I'm just like, avoid. I have studying to do, I have my patients to see. And being in this early stage of my career, I'm delighted to hear that this is something I can pursue. And it's something that my medical school is not teaching me. And I don't know that any medical schools or residency programs are teaching. There are simply too many other needs. So I'm just so delighted to have this resource and the personalized financial plan. So I have no more excuses to avoid this anymore. This is a really good wake up call for me. And I'm sure many other trainees too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this week itself has been exciting. I've got 3 students who have developed financial mini MBA course for our local medical school, and it's going to launch sort of next week. So we are super excited. I think that's going to change. Hopefully, we've got our dean's blessing, and if it succeeds, it's designed as a research program. If it succeeds, and we can show some with evidence that this works, there's a pre and post test with it, then it could be rolled out in other medical schools and so on and so forth. So I think hopefully we can fuel some momentum and start a new movement.
So needed.
I just want to add, and I totally agree with everything that's been said. One of the things that I love about one of your lectures in ThriveRx is the common financial mistakes that most physicians make.
Yeah.
Because 80% of physicians probably make most of these mistakes that you go through. And I think if you could just avoid 4 or 5 pitfalls, especially early on, Jordan, where you are in your career, that big jump from resident to attending or fellow to attending, that's fraught with lifestyle expansion like nobody's business, right? Yeah. And one of my attendings told me when I was a fellow in radiology, he said, don't buy the attending house for 3 years after you can afford it. He said, just don't do that. And that's one of the mistakes that people buy is, right, they just expand their lifestyle to fill their income.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that for me, when I was shortly out of fellowship and into practice, I saw my income expand, and I saw my expenses basically go right in line with my income after a while. And I was spending a lot more than I ever had, but I wasn't really much happier, and I wasn't really getting much more enjoyment out of life than I did when I was a fellow or even a resident, despite all of this. So, I took a step back and looked to see what was going on, and, what could I do differently? And that kind of led me into real estate investing, and I think the fundamental goal of the finance piece of ThriveRx is to, if I could summarize your module, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is to transfer active income to passive income as quickly as you can throughout your career. Because a definition of wealth is really not how much money you have in the bank or what your net worth is. It's really how many months you can go without working, right? How many months can your passive income cover your monthly expenses? And once it can do that, perpetually, you're financially free, right? So you've got a savings rate, you've got a means to transfer active to passive income, which you go into in the course really nicely. Real estate, certainly one vehicle, but there's others. And then you've got the third side, which is manage your expenses, control your expenses, avoid the common pitfalls that many physicians look to. And I think, they look to spending money as another chase for pleasure. We've talked about that in the course. They're trying to fulfill a hole or a need that's unmet, and chasing that with money just requires more and more money. So I think that this is a nice piece to kind of end this short series, but also within our course before we get into the final module, which is to put everything together into a customized daily plan. So I really appreciate all the work you've done on this, Keaton.
Yeah, thank you, Sanj. I think that was a very nice summary. I mean, you brought up so many great points. I mean, the first one that immediately comes to mind is who doesn't want to keep up with the Joneses, right? It gives us instant gratification. You want the next car, you want the next house, the cottage, the boat, the plane, whatever else money can buy, But you nailed it, right? I mean, that doesn't necessarily predict our happiness level. We know from your work that, and Jordan's work that, we are not very good at predicting what's going to make us happy. So we have no idea that getting the yacht is going to make us 3 times happier or whatever. And maybe it's a horrible financial investment, and it actually costs you more money when you're going to maybe, drive it around 4 times a year. So, those kind of big mistakes can really be very expensive in the long run. I would like to quote a book called Psychology of Money. And, that book distinguishes between rich and wealthy. And, they define rich as anybody making a good income. So, by any stretch of imagination, most physicians would be defined as rich, but they define wealthy as income that's not spent. So, stuff that you accumulated and invested at a good rate of return so that can supply you adequate passive income so that you can kind of decide how much you want to work. All of us want to be productive and contributing. So we don't want to make this sound like, this is a fire strategy. You want to quickly retire and save that $1 million and do nothing. I think that's probably not a great way. What we're trying to say is that we don't need to be stressed to live paycheck to paycheck and, really have to work or put up with that work environment which you don't have, which you don't want to, or, work 90 hours a week to supply your lifestyle, which could be very expensive if you haven't made the right choices, and then perpetually just burn through the money. I mean, my accountant tells me that, they see through everybody, right? I mean, they see people making huge incomes and nothing remains at the end because there's all this stuff that they've created around themselves and that chews through the money, right? We are pretty bad calculators of how much stuff costs to maintain, and that is often a big challenge for almost all of us, And just today I was talking to another colleague who's a coach and a psychologist and a physician wellness advocate. I mean, and she was saying, she worked in Ontario and they worked with a lot of physicians, and they were talking again and again. The common theme was, well, physicians are not good at finances. We see that repeated and repeated and repeated that, yeah, they make great incomes, but that's not translating to real wealth. So I just don't think any of us can really overestimate the value of financial education. We all could use more education on how to better manage our money and how to be very savvy at that. I don't know if that sounds reasonable as an argument.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot to be learned no matter what stage of the career you're on in the journey from, medical student to retired physician. There's different impact points along the way for everybody to learn, engage, re-engage, even modernize their financial planning strategy if they've been at it for a while. But one of the things I want to go back to is where Sanj was linking everything together. I think that's what the course helps to really do, is show how one area impacts another. And when you think of hedonic adaptation, at the beginning, when you go from residency to buy the attending house and the attending car and the attending boat, it feels good for a while before it starts to normalize, right? Before the hedonic adaptation catches up, because you've spent so many years paying in, you kind of let loose or whatever, a tendency to do that. The challenge is, though, while that's still feeling good, you don't even realize you're digging the hole.
Yeah.
You're digging the hole that it's going to take you a while to get out of. And then that's when the cycle really has people and is grabbing people, forcing them to work more than they want, puts them at a disadvantaged position at the negotiation table for their next, whether it's job or part of a job or responsibilities. And I think that's a big pitfall at the beginning. But then I think there's some mid-career mistakes that people make that if you're not, to your point, Keaton, if you're not actively thinking about it, actively planning and actively engaging, you have a tendency to end up miserable. And the thing is, it might not be the work that's making you miserable. It might be the fact that you're chained to the work that is making you miserable. And I think that's part of how this all connects together in the big picture with the pillars that we've put forward with the course design.
No, I think all points well taken. Sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, no, I think exactly what Paul is saying, and why this link is so important between well-being and financial literacy is because when you feel trapped to your work and when you are so emotionally exhausted and what you really need is to take a step back and you can't afford to do that because you haven't anticipated these things and because we've made poor decisions that have been led by thinking these things are going to make us happy that really won't. I think that adds just so much insult to injury, and we can really prevent ourselves from getting into that hole. And I think work because we want to be working and not because we are chained or tied to the work, because we don't go into this. Anyone today, in my generation at least, who's going into medicine to make money, I think, go to Wall Street. There are many other ways to make money. We're doing this work because we care and we deeply are connected to the mission. And what happens is, as we are so invested emotionally, burnout, I don't think burnout's inevitable, but I do think that we know that half of physicians are experiencing it because we care. So to then doubly not be able to take that step back, take that vacation, make a career change to work fewer days a week, whatever it may be, that's really right for the person at that time. I think that's really, really hard for folks, and it just fuels the cycle of burnout and worse, mental illness and people feeling like they are in a position that they can't sustain.
Yeah, no, I think the point is well taken. I mean, Paul, to both of your points, I mean, we are trying to sort of see how the finance piece fits into the whole puzzle. I think research shows that one of the fundamental needs of physicians is autonomy, and autonomy at workplace, autonomy in our life or whatever else. So there's no way we can discount the financial piece. We also need the financial autonomy. That's another way of looking at it, that to be financially independent is to give you the autonomy to make your decisions, which is going to hugely impact then your work-life balance. And you'll hopefully tip it to the side that's your right side, and that would really be helpful for overall well-being and support our overall journeys. So that kind of also fits into the model.
Yeah, I think I'll take what Paul said. I think is spot on, and just expand on what Jordan said. I think burnout, moral injury, whatever you want to call it, physician dissatisfaction, I think is heavily weighted and caused by being chained to the paycheck, being chained to the work environment, not being able to say, what, I'm not going to do that because I don't have to, or I'm going to do this instead. Too many physicians, I think, are just trapped, and they're trapped financially, which then causes them to be trapped emotionally. And that's I think what Paul was referring to. It's a vicious cycle. And that's why financial independence is a key pillar of flourishing, because you cannot flourish. You can't focus on unleashing your inner core potential, fully realizing your potential in the service of something larger than yourself, focusing on relationships, all the stuff that we talk about throughout the course with practical strategies to improve our well-being. None of that can really be focused on adequately if you're worried about money.
Yeah.
And so you've got to make very smart, simple decisions early on and throughout your career. And then that's just going to allow us to build on all of the other stuff that we know is important. So I think this is important, if not the most important module in ThriveRx, and it's one of the things that should be taught in med school. And I think this is why this course is so, I think, impactful for people at all spectrums of careers, right? Students to mid-career physicians, even to late career physicians who may have the financial piece down, but don't have the other pieces.
Mhm.
You know, so I think it's really, really powerful stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because we've been, for this segment, we've been talking a lot about the people that don't end up where they need to be financially. But your point is really important, Sanj, that a lot of people end up okay financially, but they're still kind of miserable and they don't know why. And it ties back to the other connectivity of what we need to do in terms of our work-life balance, and then that and on the life side, sort of the balance of professional life and personal life and relationships, and us realizing to be mindful of what we have, and where we think we are and where we want to be.
Yeah, no, totally.
You can be miserable with a lot of money.
A
No,
lot of
I
people
so
are.
much agree with that. I think the philosophy of positive psychology and the pearls of wisdom from there are equally applicable to the financial world. I mean, we see so many people who are very, very well off, but they've missed the boat. I mean, it's not. I mean, I'd give you a real life example. I know somebody who's worth many tens of millions, but they're 85 years old and they worked for 50 years in their life, and now there's no real point of that money, because other than giving it away for different causes, they've spent their entire lives really working, and this all happened on the side. But maybe they could have balanced their lifestyle better. Maybe they could have not done something differently, and not really ended up in that boat. So that those stories are so common. So I think it is useful to tap into the sort of wisdom of people at different stages of their career and see what's out there. So I think the tools that Sanj and Jordan you talk about are super powerful. I mean, not only do we need to manage our finances early, we also need to really find out what it is that we want, and really sort of try to integrate the pieces together so that we hopefully flourish and get to where we need to get. Instead of just chasing a particular bank balance, or just chasing hedonic pleasures, or just chasing one of those. It's all about having the full picture, right? It's not really as nice to have parts of the puzzle.
Right. Not these pieces are all necessary, and none is sufficient alone, which I think the puzzle of our 4 contributions that each of us bring really tie together beautifully to a picture of thriving. And I'm just excited to bring others along on this journey that we've been planning and has been underway, and that we've had this opportunity for SOMI Docs to feature. And really, if it hasn't been clear, I think we should mention this is a touch of each of our 4 modules that we do teach in our course that is online with office hours live with each of us, and you can tune in at your own time. So hopefully this gave our audience an opportunity to touch on some of the topics, and we go so much deeper in this course that we keep referring to, ThriveRx.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, Jordan. That's a good point. Part of the finance module, we have a free financial plan that's done personalized for each student. So that alone is a huge value. We also have personalized take-home exercises in this module as well as all the other modules. We go deep into real estate, how to become a real estate investor without fixing leaks, all of the stuff that can really kind of get you started, get you inspired, and all of the stuff is very, very doable for physicians. It's just a question of focusing key pieces of attention on the financial things that matter. So anything else you want to wrap up?
Just quick 10-second piece, just a quick second. I just wanted to say, this is all about connecting with like-minded people. There's so many people who are very successful out there, and we can all learn from them. And this is one of the steps to connect with that network, and collectively move forward.
That sounds great. Well, this is our final episode here in the SOMI Docs series. We thank you for joining us, and click on the link below, and we'll see you inside the course. All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.